Thank you so much for joining us today, Defne. Before we go into your story, what are your current feelings towards friendships and, and your group situations? How much pressure do you put on yourself in your friendships?
I feel like I always want to be a good friend. Like, it's something that I really keep in mind, and I put pressure on myself. Like, I want to be a good friend. The past year has honestly been very lonely, thanks to COVID, and I'm like an extrovert. Like, I leech my energy off of people, and you want to feel like someone's supporting you. But it's been really nice that, like, earlier this year I found like a new group of friends, and it's
That's lovely.
Yeah.
Especially after COVID.
I know.
How this is not what we're going to be talking about for the rest of the podcast, but just as a tip for people who, have gone through the pandemic as we all have and getting back out there, how did you make new friends after?
Well, for me, luckily, it was through a uni course where we all had to put on a play together, and it was I had one of these moments, like, everyone is, like, bursting into, like, song. It was one of these moments where, like, these are my people. And I was like, no matter where I end up, I just need to find, like, a theatre kid. I'm like, I found my people.
Yeah, if I find one theatre kid, I'll be safe.
Yep.
Great. And so today you're talking to us about toxic friendships.
Yep.
Could you set the scene for us a little bit? Whereabouts in your life did this take place?
So this was the last couple of years of high school. They were my best friend. I met them first towards the end of year 10, and then things started getting more intense towards the last couple of years.
Right.
But yeah, we shared a few classes. I found them really interesting and just kind of became friends. And then what kind of happened was I developed a crush on them. And she, kind of said, yeah, I like you back too, but it's like, oh, this won't work, or like, we're in high school, it should be after. Okay, yeah, fair enough. Like, I could deal with that. If not for the fact that throughout our friendship, she would continue to lead me on and manipulate me, and it was just that amongst a lot of other things that just, yeah.
Yeah, sure. And can I just ask, so with this friend, and the leading you on, were you ever aware of it per se, or is it something that you can label now in retrospect?
I think there was definitely, while during in high school, I became aware of it, like after the first year. But it did take some time to kind of get there and like recognize a pattern. There were just really different things. Like, okay, let's go into some incidents. Like,
yeah, sure.
One thing was like, okay, yeah, we already kind of established that I liked her, but like nothing was happening. Cool, fine. And then she kind of like forced me into confessing to her again, even though like I was already starting to kind of move on. But because she gave me the assumption that like, oh, if I confess again, then like something's going to happen. I was like, okay, fine, I love you again. And then she's like, yeah, no, I won't work, bye. And then just disappeared.
How did she bring this up?
How did she bring this up?
Like, bring it about, like to force you to put yourself on the stake again.
I don't know. She could be very vague and wishy-washy, and then there was all these mind games, like, is she saying what I think she's saying? Like, stuff like that. And then that was weird, because then it's like, well, that brought up feelings again. And I was like, what do I do with these feelings?
Yeah.
So that was one thing. And then the other thing was like, okay, like, if we can't be in a relationship, that's fine. Like, I'm happy to be friends. But like, it was also like, she didn't want to just be friends, but she didn't want a relationship. So it was this weird thing of like, I feel like I'm in a relationship without any of the perks. Like, let me hold your hand or something. You know what I mean? Because I was like, she was going through a rough time in high school, and I was really always there supporting her. And like, whatever is going on in someone's life should never be an excuse for their behavior and how they treat you.
Yeah.
But it can also be an explanation. Like, it's kind of good to know and keep in mind. But yeah, there were like a bunch of different incidents. And like, okay, one thing was like, okay, I was like, because we always had fights and whatever. I was like, okay, we're just going to be friends. The thing is, we sat next to each other in English class, and she's like, I don't want to sit next to you in English class if, like, we're not friends. I was like, no, it's going to be fine. She's like, no, one of us has to move, and I'm not moving. I was like, I have bad eyesight. I usually wear glasses. I am a first row kind of person, right? But she finally broke me down enough that I was like, okay, fine, I'll move. And then when I said that, she was like, I can't believe you would give up so easily. You're just going to give it up like that. And I was like, what? You told me, you pressure. It was one of those things, like, even if you agree to her, like, you could never do the right thing.
Yeah.
So that was like, yeah, a headache, and you just kind of felt really trapped because there was like no really a solution. Like, it was just another problem and another problem.
How old did you say you were at this time?
Kind of began when I was like 15, and then
so you really have like 17. No tools
to
say to somebody, you're asking something that's unreasonable, because at that age it feels like it's okay, I'm going to completely lose somebody forever and I'm never ever going to have a friend again if I let go of this person.
And that's the thing, like it was hard because they could seem like two separate people. And I think that's what people need to realize about, like, why people sometimes stay in, like, a kind of, like, abusive relationship. Because you see this real, like, I see the good in people. And it's hard to put them two together. And you're like, you really want this part, so you stay around for the other part. That's really not great. And, like... Oh, I lost my train of thought.
What were the positives, if you don't mind me asking? Because it doesn't sound very nice.
Right. Fair enough. Well, she could be very kind and generous, and, you know, small little, like, surprises, like, if I mentioned that, like, I hadn't eaten anything in the morning, she, like, bought me breakfast or something.
That's
or, like,
nice,
it wasn't all just, like, material stuff, but it was just, like, she was
but that's thoughtful.
Yeah, but it's thoughtful, exactly. And, yeah, we talked a lot, we had deep conversations, and, like, we shared music and, like, talked about literature and stuff like that. And it was also, like, okay, one of the things that I later realized it could also be kind of a bit manipulative. She would reveal some, like, I don't know, intimate fact about herself in order for you to reveal something about yourself.
Right.
Which, like, isn't always a manipulative thing. Like, sometimes it's a nice, deep conversation, but other times it's like, wait a minute, I kind of regret saying this now.
Yeah.
Like, she could be very charming. And I realized this once when she started talking to one of my friends, and the whole time she was talking to, what she'll do is, like, she'll ask you a lot of questions, and it's like, oh wow, there's so much, like, attention on me, I feel so special.
Yeah.
And while she was asking my friend kept, like, darting me looks, like, this is a bit weird, like, it's nice but a bit weird. And that's when I realized, like, oh, that's what she did to me.
Yeah.
Because it really kind of short circuit to a more connection, so it was stuff like that. But she could be really great.
Of course. I think what I'm getting is that you guys had a lot of common interests and a lot of fruitful and productive discussion over those interests, which is so, like, it can be so hard to find those people in high school, but some of the other behaviors sounds pretty bad. Did you ever speak to her or about it?
Oh yeah, like, I came to a point where I was, like, realizing this is bad, but what she was really good at is pretending that there was nothing wrong and nothing happened. And to me, like, I feel like that's, like, the gateway gaslight. You know what I mean? Because it makes you think, oh, maybe this isn't as bad as I think it is.
Yeah.
Or, you know, she could do the little comment here and there of, like, oh, I'm too emotional, like, oversensitive. And once she's like, you're on your period, even though I'm not. And it's like, I can't believe you as a woman would give me that. Like,
give it back to me like that. Yeah.
I know. And it's like, for a while I was even shameful with periods because of that thing. So it was that. Yeah. But then, like, one time, one of the many times, I remember being like, we need to talk. And she's like, what do you want to talk about? And I was like, I need to talk to you about you. And she's like, oh, it's about my shitty personality. And, like, she was aware sometimes how bad she was. But then it would be like, oh, now she feels bad for the fact that I'm calling her out, and I have to comfort her because she feels guilty about what she's done. And so we never kind of got...
addressed how you're feeling.
Yeah. And she would invalidate my feelings too. Like, she'll hurt me, and then she's like, if you even have any feelings about this conversation, go talk to your other friends. I was like, if I even have any feelings? Like, you just hurt me. Like, of course I'm going to have feelings. But I guess saying that kind of made her feel better. Like, I don't know. And, like, another time... Okay, this is one of, like, the worst chat chains we ever had. But, okay, one of the things that really bugged her is that, like I said, we're both in English, and I was kind of like a star top student and she was kind of struggling. So we have that kind of rivalry, right? But we would help each other. Like, we would edit each other's work and stuff. But then one time what happened is, like, we got a result for an English story back, and I thought I did really good, but I got an 8 out of 10, and I was a bit disappointed with myself because I'm a perfectionist, okay, right? But then she got an 8 out of 10, and I was like, oh my god, and I gave her a big hug, and she asked me what's my score, and initially I didn't want to share, and then she found out it was an 8, and then you saw the look on her face of, like, it just fell, and it was kind of like, I completely understand her feeling, because, like, she said, like, you know, what, you think I'm so dumb? Why would you treat me like that? Like, why is it such a big thing that I got an 8, but for you, you're disappointed with that? And I understand the feeling behind it. And, like, I think of myself as a very empathetic person. But a lot of times it was the way she expressed that, her feelings, that was really inappropriate and over the top. Oh, and yeah, she could just be sensitive. So
it sounds like you're empathetic almost to an extreme.
Oh, yeah.
Because if she's struggling and she got an 8, of course you're going to be happy for her.
Yeah, yeah.
Are you still friends with her?
Let me tell this chronology.
Oh, okay, go ahead. Yeah, keep going.
Where was I? 'Cause, yeah, and then, she kind of sent me this whole chat spam of, like, I'm so sick of, like, everyone looking at you and thinking you're so great, but meanwhile I'm dumb, and, stuff like, wait. Oh, she doesn't even want to look at me because she just feels so bad about herself or whatever. And it's really hard to be someone where you want to comfort them, but you're the one that's actually making them upset. And it's like, no matter what I try to do now, I can't do anything. So it's like, okay, like, then stop looking at me, whatever. Like, I'll disappear. And just lots of insults. And then she was kind of like, okay, I'm sorry that you're better than me, a better person, better student, more emotionally stable. And it's like, this is so passive aggressive. You're not saying sorry. And then after that whole chain, sends me her, like, story for me to edit.
Right.
Expecting me to still do it. Now, to a fault, I did, just because she had edited one before and I felt like I was in my debt. But after I sent her story back to her, I was like, I've edited your story. I think it's really good. That being said, please F off. I never want to talk to you again. And then she was like, wow, that's harsh. And I'm like, that's harsh? After everything you've just said to me? It was just really turning things. And then after that, she would send me, like, this. She sent sometimes a couple of photos or videos of her crying. Visual manipulation. Anyways, but in that moment when I told her to, like, F up, I felt really proud of myself. I was like, yeah, go girl. And then when I look back at those chats, I'm like, okay, but still I ended up friends with her again. And it was just whole cycle of, like, you know, tension would build up, something would happen, we might not speak for a bit, and then we're friends again. It was that whole kind of bad cycle. And it was also kind of like, our relationship felt a bit like a waiting game. We're just waiting around, because every once in a while, she'll be really nice, or, like, say something really sweet, or romantic, or even sexual. It's like, woo! But because it was such a, like, high highs, low lows. Yeah. You get what I mean?
It feels it, and I'm just sitting here listening to you. I'm exhausted.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah.
And, you know, she kind of began to, like, consume my whole world in life, because, like, even when we weren't at school, we were like chatting, like, all the time, and in a way that also kind of isolated me from my own friend group. We never sat together during lunch or recess because we had different friend groups, but yeah, it still kind of isolated me a bit. And there came a point where I was like, okay, I need somebody else's perspective on this. And I got a couple of friends' perspective, and I was like, yeah, you're right, this is really bad. But then she kind of found out that I was talking to people about her, so then I was made to feel bad about that, because, you know, it's like, oh, you know, you're gossiping or whatever. But it's like, yeah, but I also need help, like, so that was the whole thing. But I also wrote poetry, which really helped, because I am a poet, so it's like a good outlet. But then, so we finished high school kind of as friends, and then when we both went to the same uni, and when we began uni, she seemed to change. She genuinely seemed to, I know after everything I've said, you're like, Defne, like, this sounds like you're delusional. Like but no, she genuinely had seemed to change. And I think it was also like, we're out of that high school situation, which, regardless of toxic friendships, is a really hard.
Yeah, it's like, really hard.
It's high intensity, high alert the whole time. And, you know, there was less things for her to be upset about because we weren't spending as much time together. We weren't in the same class. Okay. It wasn't like that kind of
You were being compared against each other. No.
Yeah, exactly. Like, so, you know, my, like, dial of, like, ooh, because, like, I shut down, like, we would never work as a couple anymore, but, like, my dial went up again. I was like, oh, maybe this would work. But by that point, she already had started, like, being interested in somebody else. Like, okay, cool. I ended up seeing somebody else too, but throughout, like, the first couple of years of high school, like, we only had a couple of incidents. Like, she was a genuinely like nice, good friend. But what also kind of happened that helped was, so back in high school, I came across a couple of articles about BPD, which is borderline personality disorder. And when I came across that, I was like, this explains her so much. Now, I am not a medical professional. It was not in my right to like mention that to her. Because that also caused an argument. It's like, what the hell?
No.
But years later, she did actually get diagnosed with this. I'm not saying, oh, look, I'm right.
No, yeah.
Because next time, like, guys just subtly be like, I think you need to go seek help. Don't just throw a name of a disorder at them. But that kind of further helped, I think, both of us to kind of understand more where she's coming from. And it just felt nice, like, having in words somebody else describing exactly what she's done and me being like, okay, there are other people like this, I'm not completely crazy, yada yada. And yeah, like, she's generally changed, and like, if I ever have a problem with her now, I feel like I can just talk about it. And even like, I wanted to do this podcast, but I wanted to run it by her first, because I didn't want to be that bad friend who's like, even if she doesn't want me to do it, for me to go ahead and do it. And she was like, no, go for it, do it. I swear a tear came to my eye, because I was like, wow, high school
the
her
growth, would
have never, because she was so like paranoid about me talking about her to other people. And then even like earlier this week, we were on the phone and we were reading some of our past chats together, and we were both either like, well, you were so mean to me. But it was really cathartic that, you know, after this time I got to like,
you got the recognition.
Exactly, we got to talk about it. Like, there were elements of recognition earlier, but yeah, this was pretty recent. And it was like a bit like, just maybe like a month ago, she said, like, if I ever read through our previous chats, I'd probably like vomit. But like, she managed to do it. Like, it was a casual, okay thing. And like, me saying all of this, I want to recognize that this is an exception.
Yeah.
This is totally, like, there was this one point where, okay, I'm judging myself, like, why am I still friends with this person? I have a couple of friends who are judging me. There came a point where she herself was judging me.
Yeah.
Like, she was like,
for being your friend.
Yeah, you always say you're going to leave, but then you stay. And it's like, yeah, okay, I understand. Like, that's a bit more toxic from my part if I keep saying this, but I keep staying. But it's also like, but it's also because you're so manipulative and make me think that you're going to change and like make it hard to leave and that kind of thing. But I feel like if your own abuser is kind of like, this is weird, like, my craft isn't that great, what's wrong with you? I feel like that's a good sign to really try to leave.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like this was a case of me in the past being way too forgiving and her generally changing afterwards.
It sounds like at least
happen.
There was some space between year 10 or year 11 and then university.
It was
not
more
physical
like
or time
year
space.
12 and university.
Year 12 and university.
Because it was still like volatile up to like we
yeah.
graduated.
It sounds like it's good that you guys got some space from each other. And I don't know, did you speak to a therapist prior to university or anything like that?
She started going to therapy in the beginning of university.
Yeah, because that's you're right. Like, not having diagnosis, it can feel like a lot of your behavior is inexplicable or you're not in control. And I'm not excusing like that behavior at all. Yeah. But also, like, good on her for the growth and for like and seeking help and you know, working through life, because we all have to do it. It's just that sometimes it's really important to have a system that can give you the words that you don't have yet for how you're feeling, which sounds like she needed. Because otherwise you were the therapist, like you were the sounding board. Yeah,
I really was a therapist. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that you guys are friends now and have like a healthy back and forth. Because I don't know about you, but I couldn't be that honest with my friends. I don't think.
Yeah.
Or I haven't had to yet.
Like, we still think of each other as like one of our closest friends. And she's always gonna have a piece of my heart. I always want her as some part of my life. Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful. Do you have any, like, as you've said, and I think it's so important that you've said this and that you acknowledge it, that this is an exception. But do you have any advice for other people who are trying to figure out if the relationship or the friendship that they're in is toxic? Yeah. What's a good barometer, do you think, for them to be like, do I get out or do I stay or what?
I think the thing about the barometer that's hard is sometimes you don't know what your boundaries are until they're crossed.
Yeah.
But I will say, like, something that helped for me is, like, anytime we had like a chat argument, after we've said goodbye to each other and like the energy, like the emotions have gone down, looking back at that chat in a calmer, more objective position and then being able to judge, yeah, this is wrong. And as hard as it is to talk to other people about this, because it's also a bit shameful, talk to your other friends, get their opinion as well. Find a creative outlet, to be honest. Like, for me, it was writing poetry, but also listening to music. I put on like a playlist today of like what I made of songs I listened to back then that would help me. Like, there were a couple of songs that I would listen to on the bus. Do you have any specific
that you can tell us?
Okay, Under the Table by Banks, Someone That Loves You by Hone and Izzy Blue. There are a couple other ones, but those two, like, I would listen to on the bus ride to school and I would cry.
Yeah, it hits
like, you. It was, yeah, but it really helps because it's something else to connect to. Yeah. If you guys want a playlist, hit me up. I have a whole, it's like a sad love. That's what I call it. Yeah.
I'm lost for words, to be honest.
It is a lot. And, like, it's honestly, it's hard to navigate, like, even looking back at this, because, like, when I was reading that thing, those stuff, it was like, why the hell was I still in this? But it's also, like, how do I come to terms with that? Knowing what I know now, that like we're okay now. And it's like, it's kind of like I'm just kind of like apologetic to my past self, but it's also like, you know, it sucks that you went through that, and you know, it's hard to even like come to a conclusion of like, was it worth it? But I still, as bad as it was for me back then, if I don't think of myself in the present tense of like being in year 10 or whatever, or year 11, then I'm okay, as long as I'm not thinking as her. Because looking back at it, like, I don't regret that much of it because I've learned. Like,
and I think your friend acknowledging that what you felt then was valid. Her acknowledging that now is a big difference to you being able to come to terms with it, probably.
And I feel like now I can recognize that behavior as like more in other people. Yeah. This isn't a whole like, oh yeah, it's great to be hurt because then like, you know, but it's like, well, that's at least the benefit that you can kind of take out of it.
Learn from how people treat you.
And it's something I'm really passionate about, the fact that no one actually teaches you in the right way about abuse in like a school circumstance. Like patterns, behavior things I had to recognize myself, or I had to read up online and stuff. Like, yeah. Because it's not always physical. That's the thing. Like, not enough talk is around verbal and emotional abuse.
And it's not straightforward.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. Your story is very unique.
Well, thank you.